Shadows of Shibuya, Letters from Home, Part 6. On the night of 25-26 May 1945, the 21st Bomber Command sent nearly 500 bombers to burn out what was left of Tokyo. This would be the last major raid on the capital city. The 500th Bomb Group contributed 40 planes to this mission. Only some of the participating planes and crews are known. The B-29 Duke of Albuquerque, the Snappy Fort, the Ramblin' Roscoe Pride of the Yankees, Old Ironsides, Slick Dick, the Frisco Nanny, the Pacific Queen, and Mustn't Touch, the Super Dumbo. Takeoff was at about 1800. Planes flew individually to the target, as was standard on night missions. The largest number of B-29 Super Fortress bombers ever to bomb Japan leaves the Marianas heading to Tokyo to inflict the final devastating napalm attack on the urban industrial area of Shibuya City. Melba is reflecting on the letter Leonard wrote to her in March as she sits on the porch at Jimmie's house on Mayfair Circle, Orlando, Florida. Leonard writes, and the letter reads as follows.
Mariana Islands, March 23, 1945. Dear Melba, I received 3 letters from you yesterday along with the Easter card. It is a little early, but it's better than been late. I don't know why you haven't been getting my letters regular, but I guess it's for the reason I haven't been getting yours. I, like everyone else on this rock, is very interested and amused at Ernie Pyle's articles on life in the Marianas and B-29 missions. So your mention of those articles gives me great pleasure, but there is a lot of adding to and taking from those articles I would like to do. Ernie Pyle is without a doubt one of, if not the greatest war correspondent of all times, and when I said his articles amused us here, we of who he tells about, that is just what I mean. In fact, we all are inclined to think he is full of the old stuff used in aiding crops. And now I will try to enlighten you on my conception of real life on this garden of paradise. But first I will say this. His article no doubt takes some worry of the mothers at home, who have sons out here who never went further than the corner store before they got in the army. But a wife knows her husband will get along and live through some pretty rough going. Most of us never had it very easy, so the need for that type of bull is greatly reduced. I don't know where to start now that I have gone this far, but food and liquid might be as good a place as any. Ernie Pyle made the statement we get all the fresh eggs we want before a mission. I say I have had the grand sum of 6 fresh eggs since I have been here, and none of them were eaten before a mission. I might have had 2 more if I got up every morning for breakfast, but as you know, I am a late sleeper. You may remember my saying how bad the food was when I was in gunnery school. This here compares very favorable with it. Sometimes better and sometimes worse. And the liquid is mostly water and coffee. A book could be written on that. Anyway, the coffee is somewhat stronger than your mother makes hers, but without the aid of a strainer, so most of us here garner a large mustache to aid in drinking. The water is fairly plentiful. There has only been 2 days since I have been here that we haven't had any. Maybe I should say enough. But refrigeration is another thing altogether. Our water barrels are placed in the shade of anything that will afford such. We have a few little pine trees behind our Quonset barracks to you that affords about as much shade as one of your dad's tomato plants does. So our drinking water is kept at an average temperature of about 90 degrees. Our showers are large drums mounted high above the ground and gravity fed. An improvement has been made on most of them in the form of a windbreak, which saves a lot of water and prevents us running all over the area trying to get it to blow on us. Our toilets are all the outhouse type, so water there is no problem. I missed one thing along the food line that will interest you, Dad, especially after seeing him eat everything separate like he does. Our mess kits are about the size of this paper. We usually have a meat of some kind, God, and the cooks, I believe, are the only ones that really know, and 2 vegetables usually dehydrated, dessert if we have it, and bread all piled one on top of the other in this kit. Next time you have dinner with your dad, try to get him to mix 2 vegetables together, will you? And now for recreation and relaxation. An island, as you know, is a small body of land surrounded by water. An ocean, so naturally you think swimmer would be the order of the day. And it is to a certain extent, but there are a few hazards. such as coral rock with razor-sharp edges and undertow strong enough to pull a leech off whatever he may be on. But your love for swimming sometimes overrides, and you try it anyway. So you wear your GI shoes, you know how heavy they are, but try swimming in them and leave your shorts on the rack. There is no need for the extra weight. There are no restrictions on our beaches due to the fact that the fair sex is not present. We usually suffer some minor cuts and bruises, which takes a few days to heal, but then the ocean calls again and you get cut again. And now you think the fishing might be good, and maybe it is out past the coral reefs, but you see that stuff is too sharp, and the surf too rough for even fish o' venture in close to shore. And now, my dear, I see I have rattled on for 5 pages, and still am not finished. But if I continue, the letter will be too heavy, you will fall asleep before you finish reading it, and I will miss a test flight I have to go on this afternoon. We have been laying off the Japs for the last few days from this base, but I guess we will start another blitz soon. I will continue to tear down the impression Ernie Pyle built up in your mind at a later date. So watch for the next edition for the continued story of life in the Marianas or survival on a rock with love, Leonard.
May 25th, 1945 target, Tokyo. Fly time 12 hours and 25 minutes. A square 51. Another fire blitz on Tokyo. Took off at 1800 and hit target at 1 a.m. Really a fast trip up. We were hit by searchlights, but the ACAC wasn't on us. Some planes were really catching hell from fighters and ground installations. Target was really burning, and I believe the palace caught hell this time. Really working the city over now. Within a 48-hour period, more than 1,000 B-29s dropped more than 7,000 tons of incendiary bombs, has destroyed more than 50 square miles of Tokyo urban area. More than 50% of the city is now in ruins.
The Tokyo military prison is understaffed on the night of May 25th and early morning hours of May 26, 1945. Several jailers have abused many of the more than 60 American airmen. Sergeant Leonard James McNeil is held as a special prisoner along with the following list of B-29 airmen: Douglas Bannon, Noel Beck, Justice Butala, Alpheus Carl, Ralph Chappell, Florence Duffy, Herbert Edmond, Irvin Ellingson, David Gerhardt, Gerald Giddings, Harvey M. Glick, Walter Grubb, Elmer Hahn, Ray Harry, Alan Hill, Glenn Hodak, Eugene Homiak, John Hosty, Frederick Hulse, John Jennings, Chester Johnson, Thomas Klingensmith, Andrew Litz, Edwin Lund, Donald McNiven, Clifford Manning, Otto Merrick, Harry McMillan, Alfred McNamara, John Meager, Alan Morsch, William Muhlenberg, Darwin Muller, Maurice Myers, Robert Need, Harold Nelson, Kenneth Pedersen, James Pettit, Thaddeus Pasternak, David Powell, John Price, Calvin Raymond, Eugene Redinger, James Reinhardt Jr., Theodore Reynolds, Raymond Richmond, Donald Schubert, Gene Schwartz, Anthony Scalaro, Robert Sedone, Gilbert Stockinger, Edward Sullivan, William Sutherland, Doyne Turner, Donald Van Dever, Imver Hines, Bertram Ware, James Warren, John Welsh Jr., Henry Young, Laverne Zaylor. The descriptions that follow are accounts selected from War Crimes Trial Documents T-078, Yokohama, Japan, 1948, May 26, 1945. At midnight, the Tokyo military prison is beginning to be struck with incendiary bombs. The first building hit was on the workshop number 3 across the compound from cell block number 4. Tokyo was burning so brightly that Cliff Smith, flight engineer in the Bricker crew flying the Super Dumbo at quite some distance from the city, could read his instrument panel from the light. The following testimony about the conditions in the prison on this night are from the War Crimes Trial, Yokohama T-078. The trial was conducted in 1948. As the flames of war consumed Tokyo on the night of May 25, 1945, Tokyo Military Prison teetered on the edge of catastrophe during a massive B-29 incendiary raid. Prison official Hatsuaki Kambe, haunted by his own home's destruction in the March 9th firestorm, testified in a postwar tribunal about the seething hatred toward American flyers, portrayed as ogres by propaganda, that forced him to shroud the 62 B-29 crewmen in cell number 4. In secrecy, he kept them isolated in wooden cells, avoiding open shelters to prevent exposure. Kambe admitted knowing the Americans' identities but denied mistreatment or hostile feelings. A cryptic overheard order, "If the American POWs escaped, sochise, meaning kill them," hinted at darker intention.
They were discussing matters concerning the fire, and I heard Kikuchi tell Tashiro that he thought it was better to evacuate the prisoners at that time. Tashiro answered by saying, "We will wait and see what the situation will be." About this time I saw someone running north on the pathway running along the wall connecting the outer and inner prison compounds. He came up to where Tashiro, Kikuchi, and the others were standing, and as he approached them, I heard him say that the prisoners in cell block 4 were causing a commotion. Tashiro then yelled out that the prisoners in cell block 4 were the cause of the fire, and that the prisoners in cell block 4 were not to be let out of their cells, and he further stated that if they did get out it would be permissible to kill them. From a nearby shelter, a Japanese prisoner witnessed prison officials Hatsuaki Kambe and Keiji Kamimoto, swords drawn, muttering, "Let's go and give it to them," as they hurried toward the commotion of desperate POWs banging on bars amid rising flames and smoke. Moments later, another guard burst into the shelter, confessing to a colleague, overheard by huddled inmates, that he had waved his blade to silence the Americans, kicking and stabbing those scrambling to break free from their cells. As the blaze devoured wooden structures, evacuation orders spared Japanese prisoners, who fled to the Yoyogi parade grounds through a small door by the inner gate, guarded by Okubo. But the Americans remained trapped, their cries echoing unheeded. About 15 minutes later, a large group of prisoners accompanied by guards arrived at the inner gate, having come along the wall which separated the inner and outer prison compound. One of the guards told me to open the large inner gate because the prisoners were to be evacuated through same. I told him that I had no key to open such gate, so the guard requested that I let the prisoners out through a door, which was located in the wall separating the inner and outer prison compounds, said wall being located immediately north of the large inner gate. These guards told me that orders had been given for the evacuation of prisoners, so I led the prisoners out through the door and into the outer prison compound, where they were assembled. At about 2400 hours, the residential area close to the prison received a terrific incendiary bombardment, but no bombs fell within the confines of the prison. I stayed with the firefighting unit determined to do my utmost whatever happened. I believe it was around 0100 when the incendiary bombs finally fell on the prison camp. They fell first on the dispensary, but that fire was practically extinguished. Bombs also fell on the work plant, so I went there to fight the fire. However, this fire was really fierce. I was more or less able to prevent its getting out of control. When the work plant received its second incendiary hit, I thought that it was useless to combat the fire. It seemed that Chief Custodian, Koshikawa, directing me nearby, also had the same opinion. It was then that an order was issued to release the prisoners. 46 prisoners were released, the prisoners in cell 3. I immediately rushed out of cell 3 and took on the job of emptying cell 4. When I went into cell 4, I saw that it was badly hit. The fire was raging wildly, and it was hazardous even to enter. But forgetting the peril, I worked as fast as possible to open as many cells as I could in order to save as many as possible. During that time, this cell received many direct hits. I surely thought that this was the end for me, but strangely enough, I managed to escape. I opened as many of the cells as I was able, about 4 cells, I believe. Amid the chaos of a raging fire, the witness, part of the firefighting squad, prepared to leave the cell block area through a gate marked W. Stopped by Sergeant Major Inami and another guard, both armed with sheathed swords, the witness explained his role and relayed orders from Major Kimichi, noting that Kimichi and Sergeant Sakurai were also armed and still inside. The gate was briefly closed and a portal opened, allowing passage while security remained tight. The firefighting efforts continued under tense conditions, with armed guards overseeing the scene. I believe that it was immediately after I climbed down from the tower that incendiary bombs were dropped in the area of the guard room and 4 cell block. The roof of the guard room caught on fire, so I climbed on top of the roof to extinguish the flame. As I saw it, after I extinguished the flame on top of the roof the guard room, there were men on top of the roof of 4 cell block attempting to extinguish the flame. I do not know the exact spot on which the incendiary bomb or bombs fell on. 4 cell block. The residential area close to the prison received a terrific incendiary bombardment, but no bombs fell within the confines of the prison. I stayed with the firefighting unit determined to do my utmost whatever happened. I believe it was around 0100 when the incendiary bombs finally fell on the prison camp. They fell first on the dispensary, but that fire was practically extinguished. Bombs also fell on the work plant, so I went there to fight the fire. However, this fire was really fierce. I was more or less able to prevent its getting out of control. When the work plant received its second incendiary hit, I thought that it was useless to combat the fire. It seemed that Chief Custodian Koshikawa, directing me nearby, also had the same opinion. It was then that an order was issued to release the prisoners. 46 prisoners were released, the prisoners in cell 3. I immediately rushed out of cell 3 and took on the job of emptying cell 4. When I went into cell 4, I saw that it was badly hit. The fire was raging wildly, and it was hazardous even to enter. But forgetting the peril, I worked as fast as possible to open as many cells as I could in order to save as many as possible. During that time, this cell received many direct hits. I surely thought that this was the end for me, but strangely enough, I managed to escape. I opened as many of the cells as I was able, about 4 cells, I believe. Amid the chaos of a raging fire, the witness, part of the firefighting squad, prepared to leave the cell block area through a gate marked W. Stopped by Sergeant Major Inami and another guard, both armed with sheathed swords, the witness explained his role and relayed orders from Major Kimichi, noting that Kimichi and Sergeant Sakurai were also armed and still inside. The gate was briefly closed and a portal opened, allowing passage while security remained tight. The firefighting efforts continued under tense conditions, with armed guards overseeing the scene. I believe that it was immediately after I climbed down from the tower that incendiary bombs were dropped in the area of the guard room and 4 cell block. The roof of the guard room caught on fire, so I climbed on top of the roof to extinguish the flame. As I saw it after I extinguished the flame on top of the roof the guard room, there were men on top of the roof of 4 cell block attempting to extinguish the flame. I do not know the exact spot on which the incendiary bomb or bombs fell on 4 cell block.
A blaze igniting in the northwest sector of the workshop area, sparked by small, silver, hexagonal incendiary bombs dropped from the sky. Soon after, he descended from his post when a replacement arrived, only for more bombs to strike moments later. This time, the incendiaries targeted the guard room itself and the adjacent 4 cell block, setting the guard room's roof ablaze. Without hesitation, Takahashi climbed back up to battle the flames licking at the structure. Though he couldn't pinpoint the exact time of the strike amid the pandemonium, he glimpsed fellow men scrambling onto the roof of 4 cell block, desperately trying to douse the fire there as well. He admitted uncertainty about the precise landing spots of the bombs on the cell block. His focus narrowed to extinguishing the immediate threat before him. This fragment of testimony painted a vivid picture of desperation and destruction under the relentless Allied bombing campaign, hinting at the broader horrors that unfolded in the prison that fateful night. The American airmen began to exit the burning cells.
I believe that he stated that 4 or 5 prisoners came out of their cell. Did he tell you that he had locked the door of that particular cell after shoving the prisoners back into the cell? I am in doubt about that point, as the same instant that he shoved the prisoners back into the cell, that area was enveloped in flames, so I do not know whether he locked the cell or not. I do not think that he had the time to lock it. Kambe and Kamimoto had shoved the Allied prisoners back into their cells during the height of the fire. Did you hear Kambe say how many of the prisoners, the Allied prisoners, were shoved back into their cells on that occasion? He stated that 4 or 5 prisoners came out of their cell. 2 American prisoners were retreating from Kamimoto at that time. They had those wooden latrine bowl covers over their heads that you spoke of. It was a large egg-shaped thing. Corporal Kamimoto cut a considerable number of men. He meant that he had cut. Then, he said, 6 men sure did cut a lot of persons. Kamimoto answered, my ability is different from yours. 2 dead American bodies lying near the inner prison gate. Blood spots were near their bodies, and one of the bodies had a wound. The body was busted as though it had been pierced with a sword from the belly button on its back. The other body was lying face down, and I noticed that very close by. Okubo was on guard at the gate. I thought maybe he had killed this man. Okubo had killed some of the American prisoners. Okubo, Kambe, and Kamimoto bragged about these murders frequently in front of the other guards. A little later, one incendiary bomb fell in the middle of the air raid shelter. Due to the smoke and commotion, a guard took us out of the air raid shelter through the west entrance. There was smoke coming in from the outside, and also smoke from here to the parade ground. Since we had received no instructions, we did not know what to do, so we remained in this area. We saw some men who were fighting the fire. I believe that these men were from our cell block number 5. A little later, we received instructions from a guard that we should go toward the east wall, so we came to the eastern side by passing through between the air raid shelter and cell block number 5. Since we had received no further instructions, and due to the smoke, we remained in the vicinity near the entrance. A little later, I believe that it was one of the Japanese prisoners state that some American prisoners had escaped. Amid this conflagration, a guard named Okubo stood ready, sword in hand, as American prisoners approached running. The first American charged forward, unaware of the impending danger. Okubo waited patiently, then lunged with a powerful forward thrust, gripping the sword in his right hand and raising his right leg for leverage. The blade struck true, propelled not just by Okubo's force but amplified by the prisoner's own running momentum. A piercing shriek escaped the wounded American, echoing through the compound, but it did little to halt the chaos. Moments later, as tension rippled through the air, the second American found himself in Okubo's path, a bit farther along a line parallel to the northern wall of the detention cells. Midway between the east wall and the cell block's edge, Okubo struck again, first slashing the man's shoulder without a word. The prisoner may have uttered something in English, but the witness couldn't make it out amid the chaos. Then, without mercy, Okubo stabbed him in the back from about 5 or 6 meters away, where the witness had shifted slightly toward the gate's center. No cry was heard from this victim, though the witness suspected one might have escaped his lips, muffled by the shock. By now, the third American had rushed forward, arriving perilously close to the spot where his comrade had just been felled. He came running from a northerly direction, but halted abruptly. Guard Kambe, seizing the moment, stepped up and delivered a fatal stab. After muttering indistinct words, he thrust the sword into the American's back. The prisoner stood still in his final instance, no longer fleeing, as the blade found its mark. The witness, piecing together the rapid events, marked these locations on a chart, painting a vivid picture of calculated aggression in the prison's stark layout. Okubo took his position at the inner gate, sword ready, alongside fellow guard Marita. As the evacuation proceeded, a witness overheard Okubo loudly proclaim to Marita, "When they come out, let's cut them down," leaving little doubt that he meant the American prisoners. Once the prison was cleared, Okubo confided in Shisaku Tanaka at the gate, admitting that he had slashed several Americans with his sword, following Tashiro's orders to ensure no one escaped alive. Tanaka, shocked but convinced, later spotted 3 dead bodies near the gate on the morning of the 26th. Okubo didn't keep his actions secret. He bragged about stabbing and killing the prisoners as they emerged, turning the deed into common knowledge among the prison's guards and inmates, as Hokagawa attested. Okubo at the scene, armed and ready. Masao Tonuchi, passing through the small door during evacuation, saw Okubo waving his sword menacingly. Tokusaburo Yamanaki, helping with the prisoner transfer, noted Okubo's sword in its scabbard resting on the ground just inside the gate, though he knew Horikoka was the regular guard on duty. Kinji Takehashi, en route to Yoyogi Parade Ground, also confirmed seeing Okubo standing guard with his weapon. Okubo's presence at the gate with a sword that fateful night of the fire. What started as a desperate bid for survival amid the blaze ended in a calculated slaughter, as the guards enforced their orders with lethal force. Tashiro again ordered them to kill any of the American prisoners that were escaping from cell block number 4. When Tashiro gave him his orders in the vicinity of the guard room, the Americans had not yet escaped, but were just creating a commotion. All Tashiro told Okubo then was to see to it that the prisoners did not escape. However, when they went to the vicinity of the inner gate, 3 Americans had escaped, so Tashiro again told Okubo, and this time he also told Kambe to see to it that they did not escape, and told them to kill them. Tashiro also told Terasawa to go catch and kill the American prisoners. Kambe was with Kamadai in cell block number 4, killing the other boys trying to get out of their cells, while Kambe was present, and then there was the incident where Kambe was present with Okubo in the vicinity of the inner gate.
In other words, there were 2 specific occasions on the night of the fire when Tashiro ordered or directed the killing of the Americans. The B-29 flyers, one in the vicinity of the guard room and the second time in the vicinity of the gate. Terasawa was when he left the vicinity of the guard room, he proceeded to the inner gate, then on to Yoyogi Parade Grounds. As the inferno intensified, bombs continued to strike, forcing the officer to seek an open area for escape. He watched Japanese individuals fleeing through a small door in the wall beside the still-shut main gate, and soon followed suit, running out to the safety of the Yoyogi Parade Ground, where he spent the remainder of the night alongside neighborhood residents, fellow prisoners, and guards. Guard Kiji Kamimoto's escaping to a water-filled shelter. He later counted over 20 charred bodies. Between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. on the morning of May 26, 1945, all of the Americans would die as a result of the night's horrors. At about sunrise, the jailers began to return from Yoyogi Parade Ground, the area they had escaped to. At dawn's first light, he returned to the smoldering ruins of the prison, confronted by a grim scene of destruction. The buildings lay in complete ashes. Near the gate, he discovered the charred body of 1 American on the right and more on the left. Deeper inside, along the east wall between building number 4 and the gate, 24 or 25 American bodies were strewn, with the rest amid the debris of the building itself. A total of 62 Americans, most horribly burned to death, though 3 near the gate likely succumbed to suffocation.
Without delay, the officer rallied the surviving Japanese prisoners, ensuring they were fed and assembled. He then tasked Fushimawa with burying the American dead and handling immediate matters, before heading to Army headquarters to deliver his report to General Shimada and the second-in-command of the Eastern Army. Though the names of the fallen Americans went unreported, lost forever in the fire's destruction, I saw a dead body in the inner gate when I returned to the prison. I also saw about 10 locked bodies west of cell block number 3 and 4, about then when I went to the kitchen to eat, after one of the guards, whose name I do not recall, relieved me at the air raid shelter north of cell block number 5. After I ate some rice balls in front of the kitchen, Sakurai asked me to aid him in salvaging some clothing that we needed in an air raid shelter north of the dispensary. After we salvaged the clothing, I returned to the front of the kitchen, and a few moments thereafter, Kambe came to me and said, "Let's go and see a dead body." Kambe led me to the area in the rear of the kitchen, where we saw one dead body next to the building, which quartered the guards that were on outer duty. When we returned in front of the kitchen, Chief Jailer Kikuchi told Kambe to bury the dead bodies. After Kambe had left for this detail, Kikuchi told me to assist the 2 recruit guards with prisoners, who were removing the 2 bodies by the inner gate. I assisted them in carrying the 2 dead bodies west of the upper reservoir, between cell block number 2 and 3, where they were buried. Kambe and Asakura were in charge of the burial. I washed my hands in the well after this detail and returned to the prison, going around cell block number 5 and coming up the east path along the east wall to the front of the kitchen. While touring the prison, I saw the prisoners that perished in cell block number 4, and as I passed cell block number 2 and 3, I saw the men burying the dead bodies. All the bodies that I saw were burned beyond recognition. An unidentified number of Americans were killed. The buildings were completely burned down. On the right of the gate as I came in was the dead body of 1 American, and on the left, more dead Americans. There were 24 or 25 bodies of Americans along the wall, on the east side of the fence between building number 4 and the gate. The rest were in the ruins of building number 4. 62 bodies of Americans counted in all. Going around cell block number 5 and coming up the east path along the east wall to the front of the kitchen. While touring the prison, I saw the prisoners that perished in cell block number 4, and as I passed cell block number 2 and 3, I saw the men burying the dead bodies. American bodies found inside cell number 4 were pulled out of cell number 4 and buried. I think about 42 or so bodies. About 10 had brains out, and their bodies were found along the path by the easterly wall. They were piled up in a heap. We buried their remains, of those in cell number 4 in the air raid shelter between cells number 3 and number 4. They were buried by Japanese prisoners under the jurisdiction of another guard. I do not remember his name. 10 bodies had been buried. The guard in charge of this detail told me that those men had been killed by being bayoneted.
Leonard James McNeil, a young airman in the United States Army Air Forces, finally found a rare moment of peace on March 20th, 1945. It was his first day off since arriving on the island base, and he used it to write a heartfelt letter to his father-in-law, Jimmie, back home. The thought to write had hit Leonard like a bolt in the middle of the night, a reminder of a time when he had worried about Jimmie's health, mistaking it for a bad cold or something more serious. He had prayed earnestly for Jimmie then, and he reaffirmed his faith now, believing that their efforts, both at home and on the front, would be rewarded by the Lord. Just days earlier, Leonard and his crew had flown a mission over Japan, bombing Nagoya, one of the enemy's most vital cities. The firestorm they ignited was so immense that it lit up the sky, visible for over 100 miles as they flew off the coast. Leonard marveled at the destruction, doubting much of the city survived, and just the night before, the radio had buzzed with news of another raid on Osaka, part of the relentless campaign to bring the war to Japan's doorstep. Amid these tales of fire and destruction, Leonard's thoughts drifted to his family. He confessed he hadn't been the best at keeping in touch with them, but he reached out to Jimmie as both a friend and father-in-law. The following is the letter Leonard wrote to Jimmie Colbraith.
Marianas Island, March 20th, 1945. Dear Jimmie, it struck me the other night just before we went in on Nagoya that I should write to you because at that time I had a devil of a lot on my mind, and it looked like all old hell was going to break loose. But I guess the Lord answered my prayers any way I prayed and got back. Thank God I learned how and didn't forget. The job we are doing isn't easy, not even for a brave man, and I always felt I was a little chicken. Our reward for what we are doing is great, or I think so anyway. I have sat and looked back at Japan for 100 miles off the coast and seen 3 of their largest and most important cities in flames. Can you imagine a fire in Tampa that you could see in Orlando? It wouldn't leave much of Tampa, would it? I don't think there is much left of Nagoya or the others either. We came back with our chest stuck out and our head held high, somewhat different than the way we go out, but we are still shaking inside. But it isn't all hither. Island life, I guess, could be enjoyable. Anyway, you wouldn't have to go far to fish. The bomb group made arrangements for some to go offshore a little way to do some deep-sea fishing a few days ago. I sure would have liked to have gone, but I was busy over Osaka the night before, and sleep after anything like that is somewhat more important than fishing. And speaking of Osaka, we brought back a good-sized flak hole in our ship from that job, but no personal injury to any crew members. It's going to take a lot of prayers to bring us through them all, as well as we have been, but I guess the whole country is for us, and only half of it praying. My real reason for writing to you is not to tell you what is going on. You read that in all the papers and hear on the radio more than we do ourselves. My principal thought is about my family, and I write to you as I always felt as a friend, and not a son-in-law. Everything is left so the kids can have about half a chance growing up. But I doubt if Melba will be level-headed enough to think of the things that will be coming to her and the kids. I have told her before I came over, but I believe she took it too lightly and thinks it can't happen here to her. But maybe it can. My folks should be notified by her, as they are not listed as next of kin on any of my papers. So please don't let anything be overlooked. Well, Jimmie, that about covers everything. I do believe this is the first day off I have had since I have been here. Guns all cleaned and put up for another day. We are just waiting for another Jap city to spring up for us to destroy. Guns at home have a habit of being cleaned every season, but here it's open season, so gun cleaning is about a daily routine, before and after each mission and in between times too. If you keep them good, they will do for you when you need them. If you don't take care of them, the nips take care of you. The things that can't be written, I hope someday to be able to tell you. It may be a couple of years, and by then it will all be funny, but now it's darn serious. Sincerely, Leonard.
There are no heroes in this war. We all offer our bodies, and only a few are chosen. But it shouldn't reflect any special credit on those that are chosen. They are just the lucky ones. I am very proud and happy that mine was chosen, but it shouldn't give me any extra credit. Think of all the thousands of other boys that offered. All the heroes are dead, and the real heroes are the parents. Dying is a very simple thing. I've looked at death, and really I know. If I should have died, it would have been very easy for me. Quite the easiest thing I ever did. But the people at home do not realize that. They suffer 1,000 times more. When a mother brings a son into the world, she must know that someday the son will die, and the mother of a man that has died for his country should be the proudest woman in the world, and the happiest. And how much better to die in all the happy period of disillusioned youth, to go out in a blaze of light, than to have your body worn out and old and illusions shattered. The writer is Ernest Hemingway. Fade to black.
This is the end of Part 6, Shadows of Shibuya. Letters from Home. Part 6, continued in Part 7.